A nationally recognized executive coach and founder of the Oxley Group, he spent over 30 years transforming leadership in companies like Coca-Cola, CNN, and Progressive. A top sales leader turned advisor, he's built programs that cut through complexity to deliver real business results. He's the author of Four Faces of Frustration, available in bookshops near you. He is a citizen of the world, born in this beautiful United Kingdom, transferring to Canada, and now in the United States, where he finds himself today. And when he's not coaching, you'll find him on a quest for clarity. Welcome to Leadership That Sells. This is a show where we decode what great sales leadership really looks like. If you're leading a team of managers and you're wondering why things feel misaligned, it might not be them, it might be you, it might be the model you're working for. Most sales teams today are not actually teams at all. They're what we call teams in parallel. These are reps doing similar work independently. We built a lightweight reset to help your managers do things in the right way using clarity, identity, and autonomy. And if this sounds like your world, grab the free Parallel Team Playbook at the Practical Leadership Academy website. It's short, sharp, made for senior sales leaders, CROs, and folks with teams of managers, just like that. Andrew Oxley, thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Thanks, Paul. Glad to be here.
Now, that was a far too short introduction for somebody of your caliber and experience, sir. You've got the book, you've got the leadership practice, coaching practice, and
Yes.
citizen of the world. So, what was the town you came from in the UK? You're born.
I actually was born in Warrington, Cheshire. So, well, it's now Cheshire now. It was something different way back when I was born there. But yeah, Warrington. And I immigrated to Canada at 18 months, so I did not have tremendous input into the decision to leave. It was so funny. My parents actually, we didn't have any money, so they immigrated by ship. They may have been the last people to leave England by ship in 1965. But anyway, they ended up in Canada, lived there, and then when I experienced what I refer to affectionately as my midlife crisis, I immigrated to the U.S. and started a coaching practice, and that's where I've been ever since 1993.
Fantastic. Well, a part of your illustrious career was working for one of the Fortune 500 companies that are out there, and you ended up leading the sales team, a top performing sales team, when you were about, you said 18 months old. So this was about when you were like 4.5 years old.
Yeah, that's right.
27, I think it was, when you were 27. Now, you don't get to lead a top performing sales team unless you're parachuted in and you take it over and it was already top performing, or it was transformed by you into a top performing sales team. Which one was it?
It was both, actually. So I actually went to work for Train Canada in Toronto, and it was a beautiful time to be in that particular occupation. There was a huge building boom going on in Toronto, and I had a mentor who I learned an amazing amount from. His name was Jim Kay. And Jim actually and I had the top performing sales team in the country. And he ended up leaving the company, and I ended up taking over the team and pushing it even further higher.
So what was then the things, or the thing, pick one big old thing that you said, this is it. This is the silver bullet. Now we know there are no silver bullets, but let's pick one that's stuck in your mind that shapes how you coach today.
Yeah, so many things, but it was. I think that the answer that I had when I was leading that team, and I was a player coach, right? I was selling and coaching at the same time, was really around, I'm going to work harder than anybody else. I'm going to work an amazing number of hours, which led me to where I am today. I actually woke up one day and I picked up the Globe and Mail, which is the national newspaper in Canada. And in the bottom right-hand corner, there's this little thing called Your Morning Smile. And this particular day, the morning smile was, the trouble with the rat race is even if you win, you're still a rat. And I remember shaving that morning and looking in the mirror and thinking, I'm just going to be a big fat rat. That's all I'm going to be, is I'm going to be a big fat rat sitting up here in Toronto. And I don't want to be a big fat rat. Now, I did something that I know you've probably talked to people about, Paul. I actually didn't know how wise it was that I was doing, but I actually took that saying and I sellotaped it on both sides. I didn't have a laminating machine, and I stuck it in my wallet because I'm like, how do I change my life? And every time I open my wallet, I'd see that. And I'm like, how do I change my life? How do I change my life? Now, what I want to say to your podcast listeners is this: the questions that will move you further faster are not the questions you know answers to. They're the questions you don't know answers to. So I didn't know the answer to that question, but I did something really wise. I kept the question in front of me. I kept asking it. I kept asking it. And I actually arrived at an incorrect conclusion. I'm glad I did. I thought the problem was the job. I thought, well, it's the company, it's the job. I need to go start my own company because then I will have this, this wonderful life. And the problem with leaving your job to create a different life is quite often you take the biggest problem with you, which is yourself.
Yeah.
And so I just recreated the very same issues in my new job that I had, as the job that I had left. And so, but I never left the question, how do I change? How do I change? How do I change? And I actually started to realize that that was going to be my life's work, not just for me to figure out how to lead teams in a way that, as a servant leader, which we've talked about, but also be able to teach other people how to do it in such a way that they could experience all that life had to offer. Because I think what happens to a lot of people is after, and this is what happened to me in Toronto, I just was going through the day hoping to survive, to fight another day and get to the next day and the next day. And we were getting great business results, but I had to believe that there was more to life than that. So what I learned in that high performing job was what I didn't want to be. I just didn't know what I wanted to be. And that is what I've been figuring out for the last 30 years and helping other leaders figure out as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. I think, as you said, the thing that you carry with you all the time is you. And your initial reaction was, I'm going to leave what I think is the problem behind.
Yeah.
When the problem is always you.
It's always.
If there's some problem with your team, start with you. Look in the mirror. If there's a problem at home with your wife, how your kids are behaving, start with you. Look in the mirror. Deal with yourself. Deal with your own baggage before you lay it on somebody else.
Right.
And you say, I'm just going to stand up here. I've got my own little card. It's pinned to my pin board right here next to my kids' pictures. And mine's it's a Bible quote, and it says, "Ask and you will be given; seek and you shall find; knock and the door will be opened." And that's mine. That's the one that's right in front of me up here. So that's I keep asking, I keep looking, I keep knocking, I keep pushing, and you don't know where you're going to go. You get somewhere, and there's a plan. We just keep going.
Yeah, one of my favorite interview questions to ask leaders is, what are the questions you don't currently have answers to?
Yeah, I like it.
And they're like, well, and you learn a lot about people when you ask them that question. You're like, because everybody wants to put up a facade that they have all the answers. Well, there are a lot of, I have more answers today than I had 30 years ago. When I started this coaching practice, I actually thought I was a pretty darn good leader. I actually probably should have been indicted for ignorance. I knew very little, but I thought I knew a lot. I know more today than I knew then, but I think I know less. Because the more you learn about a subject, the more you realize, gosh, there's a lot to know. And human beings are the most complicated organisms on the planet. And as you said in your intro, when you put a team of people together, complexity doesn't double when you go from 1 to 2, or when you go from 2 to 4. It goes up in a, sort of an exponential.
Logarithmic.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Logarithmic.
Function of the function of the function. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's that learning piece. In that, if you want to understand how people work, you look in the mirror first. It goes back to that. And it's a very male thing as well. It's I did well because of me. I didn't do well because of them, the outside influence. So I'm going to take my learnings somewhere and use everything that I've got into this new environment, and then you realize, I just completely contradicted myself. Yeah. There's a time element, I think, as well in that. Now, for if you're just listening, what you can't actually see is that my illustrious guest, Andrew here, he's only about 25. Okay, he's just a young baby. When you get to somebody as old as me, You realize that as you go through a particular point in your life, you start to question things. You wonder, am I done? Is that it?
Yeah.
And the realization that that hit me was there is a change in approach and a change in what value you bring, in that you were previously valued and paid for the knowledge you had and the ability that you brought. And that increasingly I find myself paid and valued for the questions that I ask and for becoming a conduit towards something else. I'm a conduit for other people to expand their knowledge. Now, my son has a lovely thing. He's only 11. He's a child philosopher king. And we were talking about what wisdom is. Okay,
Yeah.
the wisdom of the ancients, wisdom of Solomon, wisdom of. And my definition was that it is the knowledge that you've had, applied in experience, the things that you've done, but then reflected upon. Because so many people know a lot of stuff. Good for you, well done. Then if many, many fewer people actually use it. And many, many fewer people, again, actually think about what happened when they used it. And that's my definition of knowledge. And my son said, no, Dad, you're wrong. Because if you don't share it, you might as well be sitting up on a mountain in yoga position, just trying to seek enlightenment. So it's knowledge plus experience plus reflection, and then you got to share. And that's the transitory point where you start to bring value. Now, you've been in that position for a very long time. You've been sharing what you've been learning for a very long time. And you've even written a book. And
Yes.
different roles of leaders in there. You've got 3 roles of leaders. Is there a particular one that you think that most leaders, most sales leaders in your experience, underplay?
Yeah, well, we actually have a number of different models we use. One of the things that we've really worked hard to do is to build what we call mental models that explain complex things. And I think, a lot of times when you talk to people who are writers or people who do consulting, they try to make the things more complex. And we're always trying to make things simpler.
Yeah.
Yeah, simple is memorable, and memorable is actionable. And so we're trying to figure out, how do we make complex things simple? Leadership is complex, so what we have is different models that we sort of fold into. So the 3 roles that we say that leaders, and this is different than the book I wrote, but the 3 roles that we see leaders playing in their employee story, because when your employees arrive home at the end of the day, they're telling a story to somebody about the day. And the story usually involves, here's what happened, here's the dumb crap that happened, or same old, same crap, different day. But they're telling a story to somebody, and you as the boss are present in that story. And you're either present as the villain, the hero, or the guide. Now, I have never met very many bosses who self-identify as the villain. But in real life, villains, in the movies, they're evil. But in real life, villain bosses aren't evil. They're just sometimes either cast as the villain by the employee because the employee doesn't want to take responsibility for what's happening. Or sometimes we actually take on the role of the villain because I don't know what else to do. I don't know how else to get these people to do what they're supposed to be doing than to sort of take on this villain role. I've come to believe that even when people cast you as the villain, you have some culpability in that. That we can't point the finger at the employees and say, well, they just don't want to accept personal responsibility. Then the question really becomes is, what do I need to do differently as a leader in order to get them to accept responsibility for what's happening in their life? So that's the first role, the villain. Very few people self-identify as the villain. And yet when I ask people about villain type behaviors in bosses that they've seen, no one hesitates to share those behaviors. So somebody out there is acting like the villain, just not like us, right? Not us. We never do that. The second role,
90% of people are bad drivers, right? 90%
Yeah, that's
of people
right.
say that. No, yeah, I like it. Not me. No.
Not me.
No.
I'm never that way. The second role and people do self-identify as this one, is the hero. And the hero boss sounds so much more positive, doesn't it? It sounds wonderful, the hero. But the problem with being the hero boss is that everybody wants to be the hero of their own story. Nobody wants to say, well, my boss is awesome. I don't get to make very many decisions. I'm not really empowered. And even when I have a good idea, my boss takes it away, polishes up, and gives it back to me. And it's not really my idea anymore. But boy, I like him. Um, and that's the hero boss. So
Yeah.
what I find happens a lot is we as leaders, because we either feel guilty or we don't know what to do, we try to build relationship. We're very supportive of our people, and we have an expectation that if we're sort of really good to them, that they'll work hard. And so we're the hero boss, hero boss, hero boss, and then they don't respond the way we'd like to. So we flip over to the villain for a little while and we sort of get frustrated and angry with people. And then we feel guilty about that. So we go back to being the hero and try to build relationship with them again. And so there's this journey that I see happening between the hero and the villain. But the third role, which is the one we want to aspire to, and it truly is an ideal. It's not something that we can probably spend our entire workday in, but it's what we should be trying to be is the guide. The guide sets reasonable expectations and holds people accountable to those and supports them in the growth required to achieve those goals. So everybody thinks they're the guide. And the best boss, I've never had this fail. The best boss every single person's ever had was not easy on them. They were tough on them. They expected a lot of them, but they supported them in the growth that was required. They were a guide. So the guide, sometimes people think it's soft and you have to coddle people. Nothing could be further from the truth. The guide is not the easy boss. The easy boss is the hero.
Mhm.
The hard boss that does not support you is the villain, but the guide does both. They hold you accountable to reasonable expectations, but they support you in the growth that's required to get there.
Beautiful. Villain, the hero, or the guide. Huh. So now you've got as part of your client, your acquisition process, the thing that you do.
Yeah,
You've got a freebie. It's this leadership blueprint that you do.
yeah.
So you go through this 5-step practical framework. You've got clarity, performance, accountability, that sort of stuff. When you work with people like that, what is the biggest aha moment?
I think the biggest aha moment for people is that they actually aren't working on the problem. Uh, we call this the first law of problem solving, that you'll never actually solve a problem that you're not trying to solve. And what most people are doing is they're actually talking about the problem, but they've given up trying to solve it.
Mm.
So they say things like, I just don't have any time. I'm like, really? Now, I'm old enough to remember the movie Caddyshack. I don't know if you are,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
Chevy Chase has this great character. He's this quirky guy, and he's walking around the golf course with the main character in the movie, Danny. And Danny says, I have to go to college. And Chevy Chase says, like, you have to go to college? This isn't Russia. Is this Russia? I don't believe this is Russia. You don't have to go to college. We don't have to do anything that we don't want to do. Now, we may say, I don't like the consequences if I don't do it. Well, that's fine. But when we play the victim and say, I don't have any time, you give up all your license and you're playing the victim. So you have time. Everybody has exactly the same amount of time.
Yeah.
So when I say I don't have any time, there's nothing I can do about that. So I learned a long time ago, when people state things like I don't have enough time, that's what we refer to as a limiting belief. And a limiting belief is something that there's some evidence that it's true, but it's not helpful to believe it to get to where you really want to go. If I say I want to be more productive, I want to be more successful, I want to lead my team more effectively, but I have no time. Well,
Make time.
what can you do? You can't do
Change your
anything.
choices. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. So you can't just say I have time, because that's a lie, right? Your mind immediately says, well, that's not true. But I could change it to I have as much time as anybody else. And what I need to do are find mentors and people who can help me learn how I need to grow so I can accomplish more in less time, right? It's just simply changing the question. So what's the question? Who do I need to find? Who do I need to find? Who do I need to find? Rarely is there somebody where you're walking down a path nobody else has walked, right? Somebody else has walked down that path. And so all you got to do is find somebody who's walked down the path that you're walking down, and then work with them to try to figure out what they know, the wisdom you talked about, right? And here's what I found. The people who are truly successful are rarely unwilling to share. We used to do a lot of work with salespeople, and we used to do this thing where we challenged the team to double their income in a year. And because I think that, I think what was Voltaire said, small goals have no power to move the souls of men.
Yes.
So you have to have a big goal. You have to have something big. Now, it's not really about doubling your income, because if you double your income by working twice as hard, that's really not what we're trying to do. We're trying to double the income while working fewer hours. So we used to go work with salespeople, and I'd find who's the highest performing salespeople in the room, and they usually were closest to the door because they didn't want to be there. And I'd say, how many people have taken you to lunch in the last 12 months with a well-designed list of questions to help them understand how you got to be as successful as you are? And the answer was always the same:
None.
zero. Nobody. Why is that the case? Because we think successful people are lucky.
Yeah.
They're not lucky. There's no such thing as luck. Well, there is luck, but it's funny how when you do things a certain way, you become apparently very lucky, right? So luck can help you, but luck, when you don't work hard and you're not learning, will just be wasted upon you. So it's not really luck. I would say circumstances can hurt you or harm you, but it's what you do with the circumstances that will ultimately determine your success.
It's what you do with the cards that you're dealt, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If we then think about evolving this leadership mindset, we're looking for people to be curious, courageous enough to ask the big questions.
Yeah.
Is there a particular shift that you think that leaders resist the most? Is there a cost to not making that shift?
Yeah, yeah. In fact, one of my first mentors said to me, he said that the amount of progress you make in your life will be directly proportional to the amount of honesty you can accept about yourself. He went on to say he didn't think I was into honesty. He was not the kinder, gentler mentor. And he's right. And so the shift that we initially have to make as leaders is to be honest about the contribution we're making to the results we're able to achieve. Now, what most training programs do, and I think most training programs are written by very well intended leadership development professionals who believe that if they could just make leaders kinder and gentler, that the world would be a better place and we'd get better results and people would be more engaged or more motivated. Well, that is a lie.
Yeah.
You can buy as many football tables as you want. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be nice to people, don't get me wrong, but that doesn't make people successful. What makes people successful is engaging them in something that they care about and challenging to be the very best that they possibly can be. So when we work with leaders, we actually back up and we start with the business results. We say, what are the business results you want to achieve? And then what's not happening on the team that, if it was, would enable higher levels of business results? And then what are you contributing to that situation? So years ago, I was working with a state, Progressive Insurance is a large auto insurer in the United States. And I don't think they're overseas, but I don't know that for a fact, but I don't think they are. And they came to us and they said, well, we've got some issues with productivity of our team. And our reps are not doing things that they should be doing. And I'm like, and we want to develop our leaders. And I'm like, why? And they're like, well, they're not holding people accountable. And I'm like, well, why would that be? And so we kept asking questions and questions and questions. And so we were one of the first groups they'd ever worked with that said, well, let's measure the productivity. Whatever productivity measure you want to use, let's measure the productivity. Let's develop the leaders and see if the productivity increases. And if it doesn't, well, maybe they're better leaders, but how do you know if the results don't change? So we want leaders that, when you do that, when you connect business results to the actual development, all of a sudden it's less an HR initiative and it becomes an operational initiative. We're using leadership development to change the operation of the business. And that resonates with leaders because they like that.
I've been working selling stuff to HR and L&D for very, very many years. And the number of HR professionals, L&D professionals that have the first clue about how their business operates is very, very low.
Mhm.
And typically, you ask any business professional, operator, do you want this training thing? They say, well, why? What's it
Yeah,
going to do for me?
yeah,
And you will answer, oh, it will improve X, Y, and Z. Great, but I don't measure X, Y, and Z. How are you going to know? And the fact that you're starting with the end in mind,
yeah,
simple enough, you know. What is it you actually want us to change here? What is the dial that you want? What's the lever you want to try and pull?
yeah.
Yeah.
So the first thing is the leader has to be honest with themselves.
Mm.
Now, the problem is that's not enough because as a leader, we always say, if a journey's not involved, a leader is not required, right?
Mm.
So if you're not going on a journey, you don't need a leader. A
No.
leader is to either taking themselves somewhere they've not been before, the organization somewhere they've not gone before, or individuals somewhere they've not gone before. Now, the problem is to go on a journey, you need three things. You got to know where you are, got to
Mm.
know where you're going, and you got to have a path between the two. And there's this assumption with leaders that everybody agrees where we are and everybody agrees where we're going.
Mm.
And they're excited about it. And all I got to do is show them how. And I have found that rarely are people excited about the journey or the destination because it's what the company told them they should be doing anyway. Or maybe they are, but rarely is there agreement about where we're starting from. Now, you work with a lot of sales groups, and so I want to use sales as an example. Clearly, the most measurable occupation probably on the face of the earth, right? You can you can have a salesperson whose sales are in the tank, and they could not disagree that their sales are in the tank. It's objective, but they would disagree why.
Yes, of course. It's the
Now, the
market.
sales
It's not
leader may,
me. It's not me. It's the market.
oh, no, it's the market,
Product.
it's this, it's the product, it's the. So here's the problem. If I'm a sales leader, and I probably do know what the problem is,
Mm.
because I've been around for a long time. I'm looking at the person that they're not making enough calls. They're not they're not persuasive. They don't understand the product. I might understand what the problem is, but it doesn't matter because the salesperson doesn't believe that's the problem.
Mm.
So until we agree on the starting point, the plan is irrelevant. And this is why when you coach people and they nod their head because you're the boss and they say, "Yeah, I'll do that," and then you go away and they don't do it. Or they do it momentarily. It's because they didn't even agree
Mm.
on what the actual problem was, right? So you have to clearly identify where you are, but then you have to actually, we talked about asking questions early, you have to use questions to help them understand what the problem is. Now, one of my favorite new tools for doing this, and I was just talking to a group about this yesterday, is if you have access to an AI tool like ChatGPT, what you can do is you can sit down with a salesperson and say, let's use ChatGPT and let's look at all the different reasons why performance could be not where we want it to be in this particular industry, in this particular job. And so you design the prompt and you ask the ChatGPT to play the role of like some famous salesperson, right? Og Mandino or somebody like that. And they and you and so and it spits out and it will interview the salesperson. They say, ask me one question at a time until you have enough information to ascertain probably what the problem is. ChatGPT will tell them what the problem is.
Yeah.
It will ask question after question after question, and it's going to go, "You're not making enough calls." And the sales leader can go, "Wow, what do you think of
Gosh, what a surprise! Well,
so
computer says it must be true.
yeah, and so
Love it.
the so what now what you can't do is just do it for them and say this is what the AI model said. Let the AI model interview the salesperson and say, ask me questions one at a time until you understand the business and you understand and have a pretty good idea what maybe three or four different things I could do to improve my sales. And it's just, it's amazing. We will accept feedback from people that we probably shouldn't. Although if you do this properly, it will be an accurate answer. It's good. It's that there's not that many reasons why someone's sales are down, right? That's the problem. But we always want to point to the thing that we don't want to focus on, the thing that's outside ourselves, that absolves us of all responsibility for making the progress we truly like to make.
That's magnificent. I love that. It's super, super simple. Using the sock puppet. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me, why are the sales down? Well, I don't know. What do you think? It's just beautiful. So it's kind of like the coaching thing where you're saying, if you were advising yourself, what would you say? Well, maybe my sales are down because I'm not picking the phone up enough. Like, really?
Yeah.
Gosh. Well, what would you do about it? Well, maybe I would work harder. You would? That's fabulous. I absolutely love it. Yeah, using the tool. Superb. Right, we're going to wrap this. Before I ask you my last question, where can we find you? We'll put into the links in the description below, we'll put links to the book and to the session, the Leadership Blueprint Workshop. Where can we find you otherwise when we need you, Andrew?
Yeah, so if you go to transformingresults.com, we have free training available on the website. I'm a big believer, as I know you are, Paul, in servant leadership. We believe by giving, it comes back, pressed down and running over, right? We give away at this 90-minute workshop, and if at the end of it you want to talk to us more, fabulous. But if you don't want to, fabulous. Go use the material that we gave you. So that's one thing. The other thing we didn't talk about is the book that I wrote, which contains one of our models called the 4 Faces of Frustration. And in that book, we really talk about the different ways that people interact when they're frustrated. And part of the challenge we experience as leaders, whether it be with our customers or whether it be their employees, if they don't act the way we do when we're frustrated, we make an assumption that they're not frustrated. And by the way, when we are frustrated, we don't become the kinder, gentler version of ourselves. We become the ugly gremlin version of ourselves. So recognizing how you respond in frustration and recognizing how other people respond in frustration allows you to keep your antennas up so that you can modify your interactions with your people. And what you're going to find is a lot of the people you don't think are engaged, you don't think they're motivated, it's you. It's the way you're managing them. That's why a low performer can go from one boss and to a new boss and all of a sudden become a star. It wasn't the person. Now, if I was advising the person, I'd say, listen, you get to set the course of your life. But as leaders, we have a responsibility to create an environment where people can flourish. And so this book's all about how to recognize it within yourself, this frustration response, and how to actually recognize it with other people. And then some really practical ways of, it doesn't even take that long. It actually sometimes is even faster. I was coaching a guy just last week, and he wasn't listening to me. And I looked at him and I said, "You are so argumentative, you don't know how to listen." And he said, "I'm not arguing." I'm like, "Well, currently you're arguing with me that you're not arguing."
No, I'm
And
not.
and he said, "Really? You think I'm argumentative?" I said, "Yeah, I think you are." I said, I don't think you listen. Everything's an argument for you." And he said, "Wow." I said, "Do you like receiving feedback that way?" And he said, "I really do." I said, "The problem is your boss doesn't give feedback that way. She's a very nice person. And when she gives you feedback, you actually argue with her and she just gives up because she's not getting through to you." I said, "So you got to stop arguing with people. The only thing you should ever say to someone when they give you feedback is, 'Thank you. Please tell me more.' Now, you don't have to agree with them. You don't even have to act on it. But if you press back on feedback, people will just stop giving it to you because they're like, what's the point?" Right? So, a couple of places, transformingresults.com. And also you can go on Amazon and find the book, The 4 Faces of Frustration by Andrew Oxley, who happens to be my mother's favorite author.
Magnificent. Well, this I must share is also my mother's favorite podcast. Andrew, if there was one thing you could tell the world, if I give you the biggest marker pen ever, and 10,000 billboards to share one message, what would it be?
Yeah, I would probably say, first of all, it's the feedback that Bob gave me. It was that the amount of progress you make in your life will be directly proportional to the amount of honesty you can accept about yourself. So, where do you need honesty? Now, if you want honesty, go find somebody who'll be honest with you. Ask them where you can improve. And if they don't tell you something, it's either because you asked the wrong person and they don't trust you enough to really provide that honest feedback, or they're afraid of you. And so, don't go ask somebody who sees the world exactly the way you do. Find people who will be honest with you, who will share with you where you can improve, where you can get better.
And on that, we'll leave it. Andrew Oxley, thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Thank you, Paul. It's been a pleasure.